Hey, it's Mike here, and today, the problem with intuitive eating, how a seemingly harmless attitude toward eating could result in some less than healthy choices, a sort of trap door, if you will. I'm not trying to say that intuitive eating isn't going to help anybody or improve their situation, especially if that situation starts out really bad, but we need to investigate this and take a level-headed look at it and really look around at what people are eating under the guise of intuitive eating as well, because that's really interesting. We're also going to talk about how food cravings fit into this picture, and finally, we're going to quickly look at the case of yogagirl, a long-time vegan, a large influencer who decided to stop being vegan, and one of the reasons she cited was that it was keeping her from eating intuitively.
I put the egg on my altar and I prayed. I had the egg there like next to my crystals and like my things.
Oh, exalted one, please bless this union. I'm joking, let's go. Intuitive eating is unfortunately a pretty large umbrella, though it was coined by particular individuals, two dietitians in 1995, along with their 10-point framework. A lot of detail here, however, for most people, I believe, they just view it as listening to your body. You know, a lot of people might get their information from a popular site like WebMD, and they define intuitive eating as a simple idea. It means that you make peace with all types of food. Unlike traditional diets that restrict or ban certain foods, intuitive eating requires you to stop looking at food as good or bad. Instead, you listen to your body and eat what feels right for you. Now, starting by saying something positive about this, I do believe that there are situations where this is very likely to help, like an eating disorder where somebody's having such an aversion to so many foods that eating anything is going to help them, or somebody who has such a horrible diet, they're eating the worst of the worst, that if any intention around food helps improve their diet, that's an improvement. But for the average person, you could see where this could quickly become an issue when you're including a bunch of highly addictive, highly salty, fatty, sugary foods because intuitive eating. That would obviously be counterproductive, and I would also add that this simple definition of intuitive eating is sort of how the average American eats anyway. They just listen to their body if their body wants them to go to McDonald's and eat a bunch of burgers and fries. And for people that just want to only be fighting eating disorders, that's one thing, but I think there's a lot of people that also feel like they want to be preventing chronic diseases, preventing our leading killers, and being healthier, so level head. But let's look to Instagram to see what people actually eat under the hashtag intuitive eating, which has about 2 million posts. Woo! There's a massive range. Let's start out with ones that look healthy. I mean, this is one that I would consider healthy and delicious, and I would totally eat, but then you start the sort of carcinogen marathon here, you know, literally class 1A carcinogen covered in saturated fat, you know, more carcinogens, more class 1A carcinogens, processed meat, you know, this one probably 600 milligrams of cholesterol, you know, at least a class 2A carcinogen known as pork or the body of a pig. So yeah, it's a problem because your grease-soaked pepperoni pizza with ranch is hashtag intuitive eating. Or how about this massive serving of Reese's and ice cream with whipped cream on top? Oi, oi, oi. And that really is a problem, that intuition can encompass any feeling. Hey, maybe I have the intuition that I want to do a bunch of meth tonight. Hashtag intuitive substance abuse. That's my intuition, you can't argue with it. Or maybe your intuition is to eat a bunch of Brussels sprouts with human fingers in it. I'm joking, that's just sausage, another carcinogen. Halloween is still fresh in my mind, what can I say? It's probably the case that Hannibal Lecter was following his intuition. Anyway, you might be like, hey Mike, you're actually promoting food fear, you're playing into the whole thing that this was trying to prevent in the first place. But no, I just feel like there's a way that you could be recovering from eating disorders, assuming that people even have eating disorders that are doing this, that doesn't involve including all of the least healthy foods on the planet that exist. And I think there's a better way. And looking further into this, we can keep going with WebMD's quote. You might think this means you just eat whatever you want, anytime you want. That's not the case. Experts say intuitive eating means tapping into your body's natural ability to tell you when you're hungry or satisfied. The problem is when you can choose any food, people are probably going to be going for the most addictive, most calorie dense, again, sugary, fatty, salty foods. And that is a problem because you can't just know when your body is no longer hungry because they bypass your body's natural hunger mechanisms. For example, super high calorie, low fiber foods aren't going to be filling your stomach up as much as the same amount of calories from, say, whole plant foods would. It won't trigger your appetite even after maybe eating 1,500 calories. Also, fiber creates byproducts such as propionate that tell your body chemically that it is satiated. That would just not be there. So these mechanisms for you to communicate with your body have been taken out by the modern food industrial complex. I need to start playing into more conspiracies. I think that will help me get more views. Anyway, moving on to the topic of cravings, because I think that's really important here, because if you are intuitively listening to your body, I mean, your body is what tells you that you have a craving. So under this framework, should you just be following all of your cravings? Apparently so. Okay, now for a quick break with today's sponsor, Seed's DS01 Daily Synbiotic, and today's cool facts are going to be focused around the gut immune axis. The DS01 Synbiotic is a probiotic and a prebiotic synergistically working together, and we're talking about a capsule that contains 53.6 billion active cell units of bacteria and is specifically engineered to make it down into the part of your digestive system where those probiotics can be fed by those prebiotics and grow and then support your health in various areas that we have listed here, including cardiovascular health and what we're focusing on today, gut immunity. The colder months are coming and a lot of people are concerned about the cold and flu season. However, very few people are specifically thinking about their gut immune axis. The most interesting thing to me here is that gut microbes have metabolites that facilitate communication or crosstalk between our gut cells and our immune cells. One such messenger is short-chain fatty acids, which are created from plant fiber, as it's broken down by bacteria. From this study in the journal Nature, short-chain fatty acids promote immunity and suppress inflammatory responses in the intestine and other organs. Finally, there are strains in Seed's DS01 Daily Synbiotic that have been shown to support that gut immune crosstalk. So if you would like to try this, of course, you can click the link below and use the code Mike15 at checkout for 15% off your first month's supply. All right. But now I want to start integrating this into the story of yogagirl, who is, an influencer with 2 million Instagram followers who, as she said, was vegan for her whole adult life. And then after getting mold illness and not feeling better for a while, she decided to stop being vegan.
And what might be some surprising news, I am not vegan anymore and was getting sick all the time and dealing with mold, like making my immune system just so weak and susceptible to everything. It's just like a combination of things that just was so not healing for me. I felt so weak and so depleted in my whole body.
I would probably need to do a whole video response to do her 1 hour long podcast justice with all of the details. But essentially, she went back to her home country of Sweden.
And then Leia and I ended up going to Sweden. This was last year, so we kind of escaped Aruba and the mold drama.
Around that time, she was told by a holistic doctor that she should add eggs because of choline and protein, something magical about egg protein.
I had another, this time a functional medicine doctor, suggest I eat egg, and explaining in depth why it would be very, very helpful for me to get more choline into my diet, and that I needed this kind of amino acid profile. And have you ever considered that maybe you are a little depleted on this kind of diet?
Then after going to this woman who had chickens and just 1 egg left, she grabbed that egg and then she put it on her altar next to her crystals.
Walking around with this egg from this neighbor family in my pocket. We come home and guess what I did? Yes, I put the egg on my altar. I put the egg on my altar and I prayed. I had the egg there like next to my crystals and like my things.
And then eventually decided to eat it. And then after eating like 1 egg a week, she felt better, she says.
And it happened fairly quickly for me. Like with the egg, that I started feeling more nourished. I really think I needed a different kind of protein in my diet. I needed egg.
Like, I feel like I'm coming off being very dismissive here, but this is me actually just summarizing the story as best as I can of what she told, and it does sound a little wackadoodle. I'm sorry.
And I can giggle at myself now because it sounds a little bit ridiculous.
I'm not even trying to like respond to all of her points in this video, but I just have to quickly mention that I can't help but think that it's really possible that just getting away from the mold mild made her feel better. And also, it's just such a parallel with Raw Alignment, or Elise Parker, who, got mold illness. And then she quit being vegan around the same time that she left, and then she felt better. And in that case, there was a lot of mood making, in my opinion.
Like, I felt like I was going to go into like a psychedelic, like ayahuasca ceremony or something. Like, I felt like I was sitting there with some sort of shaman, like about to have a crazy holy experience. I went to go sit down, like I had candles lit. I peeled egg. I took a bite.
We're talking about overnight cures with nutritionally insignificant amounts of food, but let's hear her talk about that intuitive aspect, how she, was being held back from intuitively eating on a vegan diet.
And that actually just the mere label was keeping me from remaining really intuitive with how I was feeling in my body around the food that I was eating.
This is sort of along the lines of being like, my intuition says that I can't be vegan anymore. And it's sort of just a perfect excuse. And I'm not here to try and even fight her opinion on that. But here she is with the craving of eggs, which is what I really want to talk about.
And then I probably had like 1 egg a week for a while. Like, it was really this like strange, rare thing that I was figuring out how I felt. And then I started really craving it. Really, really, really craving it.
So she was eating 1 egg a week and started craving eggs from there. And this is where we have to start talking about, does craving equal an actual nutritional need, which I think would be the assumption under an intuitive eating framework.
But the feeling that I almost had is that as soon as I started eating some animal foods, like my body went like... and it's just like holding on to that nutrition that's coming its way.
Right off the bat, it's clear that it wasn't actually any difference in protein amino acid profile that she would be craving, especially because she said she was eating a lot of processed vegan foods like Beyond Meat, using isolated proteins that are of a very quote unquote complete profile, that there's no meaningful clinical difference between those. She talks about having low energy, a lot of things that could have been the result of her more and more processed diet that she describes.
And I didn't really care what it was. It was like vegan tater tots, I'm there, vegan pepperoni pizza, let's go. Beyond Meat and Beyond Sausage, let's go. Vegan burgers, vegan chicken wings, vegan cheeses, and vegan butter.
Of course, you can be whole food vegan, or at least less processed. But back to the aspect of craving. From this 2020 paper, quote, it seems obvious to assume that the emergence of a food craving might be driven by some nutrient deficiency. However, evidence for this is relatively poor. And people might be responding, but what about cases like pica, where somebody might be zinc or iron deficient and they start eating wallboard and try to eat ice and soil and all of that stuff? That is a particular situation. As Dr. Ho from Western Sydney University says, yeah, that's like the exception here. But in general, people are just instinctually craving calorie-dense foods. And yes, back to the paper, quote, humans typically crave energy-dense foods like chocolate, and other chocolate-containing foods are the most frequently craved foods, followed by other high-caloric sweet and savory foods. And a lot of people say that they're craving chocolate because of the magnesium, but kale is also high in magnesium. Least craved food that I am aware of, anti-craved. So going back to Yoga Girl, it's no surprise to me that as she adds a very calorie-dense animal food, she starts to then crave it, probably when she's hungry and needs calories. Was her body able to zero in on the fact that there was some choline in that egg and then therefore crave it and on and on? I don't think so. I'd love to see some randomized control trials on this, but it once again is frustrating that it's a person who decided to not get any levels checked or go to a nutritionist that is a vegan nutritionist and see what's up that way. And in terms of choline, yes, you can also get it from a vegan diet. Here to veganhealth.org, you can see what a day of eating looks like to get enough choline, so that's also frustrating. And maybe just take some choline supplements and see if it makes a difference. But high levels of choline can turn into TMAO in the gut, which is very likely another driver of heart disease. So maybe something that should be done cautiously. Anyway, to finalize her story, she talks about how she then decides to eat meat and dairy and fish without any other nutritional explanation.
There is a freedom in having choices. I have felt such joy going to a restaurant, and just realizing that the whole world is open to me.
And just sort of like, I wanted to eat all of the foods, and I guess that's what intuitive eating is. You just get to do whatever you want. However, getting to do whatever you want is probably not the healthiest in the long term, as we saw by people's drive to eat calorie-rich foods on Instagram, with a hashtag intuitive eating. Anyway, Yoga Girl now criticizes the idea of veganism as something that's trying to escape the cycle of life, which I disagree with. It's just trying to contribute less to the death end of the cycle of life. Also, that you can't really homestead or farm without using animal inputs, which I completely disagree with. We have large-scale and small-scale veganic farming and stock-free farming, so that's just not a fact. Anyway, if you want a full response on that, let me know. I feel like we pretty much covered it, and it's a podcast, so it probably would be boring to watch audio only. Anyway, in conclusion, intuitive eating, well, I think it probably helps some people in certain situations. For most people, it's kind of just a license to eat whatever you want. Or in the case of the ex-vegan, a license to kill animals. But we love animals and don't want to kill them. I think it makes things really convoluted in terms of having cravings for high-calorie foods. I think it's just dangerous to try and rely completely on your hunger mechanisms, which we've hacked with modern food by getting rid of the fiber, increasing the calorie density, and on and on and on. I like the idea of not being afraid of food, but I think we can't just put our heads in the sand about foods that are just very objectively unhealthy, like carcinogens. And as for Yoga Girl, why is it that virtually all of these ex-vegans have not gotten nutrients tested that they're concerned about, so they would even know that that was it, instead of just declaring, it was this nutrient that made me quit being vegan, I really needed choline or something like that, which is just frustrating and feels a little bit like disingenuous. And if she was low on it, she could have tried to up her vegan choline foods or just added a supplement in the short term to see if it went up. And of course, if you do want to try Seed's DS01 Daily Symbiotic, you can click the link below and use the code Mike15 at checkout for 15% off your first order. And let me know what you think about intuitive eating. Have you tried it? Do you want to? And feel free to like and subscribe and all that good stuff that helps me out, and I'll see you in the next one. Praise the Lord of Eggs, return of the yolk.